On the night of April 13, 2024, Iran launched 330 projectiles at Israel in a single wave. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, Shahd drones. It was the largest coordinated missile attack against a single nation in the 21st century. The defense worked. Over 99% of the incoming threats were intercepted. But the cost of that single night of defense exceeded $1.2 billion. The cost of the attack was estimated at less than $80 million. That equation, defenders spending $15 for every $1 the attacker spends, is the crisis that has haunted missile defense since its invention. And right now, in March 2026, the United States is living that crisis in real time. THAAD interceptors burning through inventory at $12.7 million per shot. Patriot missiles firing at $20,000 drones they were never built to fight. The arsenal is bleeding, not from enemy fire, from arithmetic. This is the complete evolution of American missile defense. From the first nuclear-tipped interceptor aimed at Soviet bombers to the $175 billion Golden Dome, the most expensive defense program in human history, designed to solve a problem that has been unsolvable for 80 years. The story begins with a sound. A low, guttural roar crossing the English Channel at 3,500 miles per hour. No warning, no contrail, no time to react. The V-2 rocket, Hitler's vengeance weapon, struck London for the first time on September 8, 1944. It weighed nearly 28,000 pounds. It carried a 2,200-pound warhead. And it arrived faster than the speed of sound, meaning its victims heard the explosion before they heard it coming. Over 3,000 V-2s were launched against Allied cities. There was no defense. Not one was ever intercepted in flight. Every anti-aircraft gun, every radar system, every fighter plane in the Allied arsenal was useless against a weapon that fell from the edge of space at 3 times the speed of sound. The V-2 killed approximately 9,000 people. But the real damage was psychological. It proved that a ballistic missile, once launched, could not be stopped. That idea, the impossibility of defense, would dominate military thinking for the next 4 decades. And the United States would spend more money trying to disprove it than any nation has ever spent on any single military problem in history. But there was a flaw in the assumption that ballistic missiles were unstoppable. A flaw that one team of Army engineers in New Jersey would expose in 1953. Their solution was radical, terrifying, and completely insane by modern standards. The evolution of missile defense is the evolution of national survival itself. Exodus traces that evolution every week. Subscribe. The next chapter is the one that changes everything. The project was called Nike Ajax, named after the Greek warrior and the goddess of victory, the world's first operational surface-to-air missile system, built to solve a problem that wasn't yet the real problem. In the late 1940s, the primary threat to the American homeland wasn't ballistic missiles. It was Soviet bombers, fleets of Tupolev Tu-4s carrying nuclear weapons across the Arctic toward American cities. Anti-aircraft guns couldn't reach high enough or aim fast enough. The Nike Ajax entered service in 1954. 34 feet long, 2,450 pounds, 3 fragmentation warheads, guided by ground-based radar operators who manually tracked both the missile and the incoming bomber on separate screens. The system required over 100 personnel. The missile traveled at Mach 2.3. Its range was only 30 miles. Kill probability against a single bomber, less than 50%. But the Ajax demonstrated that a guided missile could track a moving aerial target and destroy it. The concept worked. The execution was primitive, and the threat was about to change completely. By 1957, the Soviet Union had tested the R-7, the world's first intercontinental ballistic missile. The same rocket that launched Sputnik could deliver a nuclear warhead to New York in 30 minutes. Bombers were slow, missiles were not, and the Nike Ajax was suddenly irrelevant against a weapon arriving from space at 15,000 miles per hour. The Army's response was the Nike Hercules, faster, longer range, and one critical addition that reveals how desperate the strategic situation had become. The Nike Hercules carried a nuclear warhead. The official, approved, funded war plan of the United States military was to detonate nuclear weapons in the atmosphere above American cities to destroy incoming Soviet nuclear weapons. Defense by nuclear self-immolation, hundreds of Nike Hercules batteries deployed in rings around major cities, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, nuclear warheads on launch rails in suburban neighborhoods pointed at the sky. The existence of those warheads in residential areas remains one of the most uncomfortable secrets of the Cold War. families raising children 3 miles from thermonuclear weapons, school buses passing launch sites every morning. The warheads were live. The secrecy was total. The absurdity was not lost on the engineers. Detonating nuclear weapons above your own territory to prevent nuclear weapons from hitting your own territory was not a solution. It was a paradox. The real question remained: could a conventional missile intercept a ballistic warhead traveling at Mach 20 outside the atmosphere before it ever reached American soil? That question consumed the next 30 years, and the answers would be classified at the highest level of national security. In 1967, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara announced the Sentinel program, the first serious attempt to build nationwide missile defense against ICBM's renamed Safeguard in 1969 under President Nixon. It centered on 2 Interceptor missiles that represented a quantum leap in ambition. The Spartan, 3 stages, solid fuel. Designed to intercept Soviet warheads in space at ranges exceeding 460 miles, 55 feet tall, 29,000 pounds, armed with a 5-megaton thermonuclear warhead, detonated in the exoatmosphere to generate X-rays that would destroy incoming warheads before re-entry. The Sprint, the opposite philosophy, short range, last resort, 0 to Mach 10 in 5 seconds, 100 Gs of acceleration, so violent no human organism could survive it. Its skin glowed white-hot from air friction within seconds. It carried a low-yield neutron bomb to kill a warhead's electronics. The Sprint had to intercept below 100,000 feet, less than 15 seconds before detonation. Success meant a disabled warhead. Failure meant a city disappeared. Safeguard became operational at a single site in North Dakota in October 1975. It protected one thing: the Minuteman ICBM silos at Grand Forks Air Force Base. Not cities, not people. The ability to strike back. It operated for exactly 1 day. On October 2nd, 1975, Congress voted to shut it down. The cost was staggering, the technology was questionable, and the strategic logic had been undermined by a treaty. The Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty of 1972, signed between the United States and the Soviet Union. Each nation limited to 1 missile defense site. The logic was paradoxical, but internally consistent. If neither side could defend itself, neither side would dare attack. Mutual vulnerability guaranteed mutual restraint. Defense was destabilizing. Offense was stabilizing. The safest world was one where everyone was completely exposed. For nearly 30 years, that logic held. The United States effectively abandoned national missile defense. The American homeland was deliberately left undefended against the most destructive weapons ever created. This was not an oversight. It was doctrine. Then, on March 23, 1983, President Ronald Reagan went on national television and proposed something the entire defense establishment considered impossible. He called it the Strategic Defense Initiative. The press called it Star Wars. A layered shield, ground-based interceptors, space-based lasers, orbital kinetic kill vehicles, capable of detecting and destroying thousands of Soviet nuclear warheads in flight. Estimated cost, $100 billion to $1 trillion. The physics community called it fantasy. The Soviets called it a declaration of war. But inside the classified labs, engineers encountered a problem far more fundamental than cost or politics. Soviet ICBMs didn't carry 1 warhead. They carried 10. And alongside those warheads, they deployed dozens of decoys, inflatable balloons, chaff clouds, thermal signatures designed to look identical to real warheads on every sensor available. In the vacuum of space, a 1-kilogram balloon and a 300-kilogram warhead move at exactly the same speed. They reflect radar the same way. They radiate heat the same way. The Interceptor had to choose, and it had no reliable way to tell a city-killing weapon from a ghost. That decoy problem, warhead discrimination, would remain unsolved for 40 years. The technology to crack it would not arrive until the age of artificial intelligence. And when it did, it would become the invisible backbone of the most expensive defense program in history. Inside those same laboratories, a small number of engineers focused on the one component that might actually work: the exoatmospheric kill vehicle, a sensor-equipped projectile designed to collide directly with an incoming warhead in space. No explosive, no nuclear charge, just kinetic energy. 2 objects hitting each other at a combined speed of over 22,000 miles per hour. Energy released, over 10 tons of TNT. The concept was called hit to kill, finding a bullet with a bullet, in space, with no margin for error. The technology that separates nations that survive from nations that don't is rarely the technology that makes the news. Exodus maps the transformation others overlook. Subscribe. The evolution accelerates from here. It took 18 years and over $100 billion. But on October 3, 1999, a ground-based interceptor launched from the Marshall Islands struck a simulated warhead over the Pacific at an altitude of 140 miles. The first successful exoatmospheric hit-to-kill intercept in history. No nuclear detonation over friendly territory, just physics. A 40-pound kill vehicle hitting a warhead at closing speeds that made the sprint look slow. After September 11th and the U.S. withdrawal from the ABM Treaty in 2002, the Bush administration activated the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense System, GMD, 44 interceptors at Fort Greely, Alaska, and Vandenberg Air Force Base, California, each carrying a single exoatmospheric kill vehicle, each costing approximately $75 million, designed to stop one thing, a long-range ICBM from North Korea or Iran. The GMD is operational today, the only system capable of defending the continental United States against an ICBM attack. Test record through 2026, roughly 11 successful intercepts out of 19 attempts, 60%, against a weapon that requires 100%. That gap is the defining tension of the entire evolution. But while the GMD watched the Arctic sky for warheads falling from space, a different threat was being born in tunnels and laboratories across the Eastern Hemisphere. A weapon that doesn't arc through space like a ballistic missile. A weapon that skims the upper atmosphere at Mach 15, maneuvering unpredictably, invisible to the radars GMD depends on. It doesn't fly like a missile. It glides. And every existing interceptor was designed for a world where that weapon didn't exist. The Patriot missile system, MIM-104, first deployed in 1984, designed to shoot down aircraft. Not ballistic missiles, not cruise missiles, aircraft. A Cold War air defense weapon adapted, sometimes desperately, to threats it was never built to face. The Patriot's combat debut came during the Gulf War in 1991. The Army claimed 96% success against Iraqi Scuds. Post-war analysis by MIT and the General Accounting Office suggested closer to 9%. On February 25, 1991, a Patriot battery in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, failed to intercept a Scud that struck a U.S. Army barracks, killing 28 soldiers. The software clock had drifted by 0.34 seconds over 100 hours of continuous operation. At Mach 5, 0.34 seconds translated to a targeting error of 687 meters. 28 lives lost to a rounding error. The most consequential software bug in military history. It drove a complete redesign. The PAC-3, 302 kilograms, Mach 5, no explosive warhead, pure kinetic impact. Steered by rocket thrusters adjusting trajectory to the final millisecond. A guided metal fist at 5 times the speed of sound. By 2024, the PAC-3 had become the most combat-tested missile defense system on Earth. During Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Patriot batteries successfully intercepted Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. A weapon Russia had claimed was unstoppable. A system designed in the 1980s, killing a weapon designed in the 2020s. The evolution of defense does not always favor the new. But the Patriot was being consumed. Each PAC-3 cost between $4 and $6 million. Raytheon produces roughly 500 per year. Ukraine using them against cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones. Saudi Arabia against Houthi missiles. By 2025, the Pentagon faced a quiet crisis. Interceptor inventory shrinking faster than production could replace it. Every missile fired in defense was a small financial victory for the attacker. The Pentagon calls this a cost imposition strategy. The attacker doesn't need to penetrate the shield. The attacker just needs to make the shield too expensive to maintain. THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, 20 feet long, 900 kilograms, Mach 8.2, zero explosive, zero fragmentation, pure kinetic energy. A guided projectile destroying metal at 150 kilometers above the Earth. 17 intercept tests, 17 kills. A perfect record against a problem that has no room for imperfection. Each THAAD interceptor, $12.7 million. Each battery, 48 rounds. 7 batteries worldwide. Estimated total inventory, fewer than 500. In March 2026, THAAD batteries are actively deployed in the Middle East, intercepting Iranian ballistic missiles. Each successful kill cost $12.7 million. The missiles being intercepted cost a fraction of that. The United States is hemorrhaging interceptors. Not because the system fails, because it succeeds. At a price that is strategically unsustainable. The cost imposition crisis of 2026 is not a failure of engineering. It is the inevitable consequence of a paradigm governing missile defense since 1954. Every threat requires a dedicated interceptor that costs more than the weapon it destroys. For 72 years, every advance has made interceptors more accurate, more reliable, and more expensive. Kill probability goes up. Cost goes up faster. Inventory goes down. The attacker builds more cheap missiles. The math never changes. Until now. What comes next is not an improvement. It is a paradigm collapse. The architecture of national survival is being rewritten in laboratories across the country. The systems emerging will define the strategic balance for the next half-century. Exodus documents that transformation as it happens. Subscribe. The acceleration is just beginning. On March 7, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order establishing the Golden Dome program, $175 billion over 20 years. The most expensive single defense program in American history. Its goal, a comprehensive, multi-layered shield protecting the entire continental United States against all aerial threats, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, and drones. The name echoes Israel's Iron Dome. The scale is incomparable. Iron Dome protects a country smaller than New Jersey. Golden Dome must protect 3.8 million square miles. Iron Dome intercepts rockets at Mach 1/10 miles. Golden Dome must intercept hypersonic weapons at Mach 20/5000 miles. The challenge is not incrementally harder. It is categorically different. Golden Dome envisions multiple simultaneous layers. A space-based sensor constellation, hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit tracking every missile launch on the planet. A boost phase intercept layer, destroying missiles in the first minutes after launch before they deploy the decoys that have defeated every interceptor since Star Wars. A mid-course layer, upgraded ground-based interceptors carrying next-generation kill vehicles. And for the first time, those kill vehicles will use AI-driven discrimination algorithms trained on decades of classified data to solve the problem that defeated Reagan's engineers 40 years ago, telling a real warhead from a ghost. The decoy problem. Cracked not by better sensors, but by machine intelligence processing infrared signatures, radar returns, and trajectory data simultaneously, at speeds no human analyst could match. A terminal layer, THAAD and Patriot enhanced for hypersonic glide vehicles. And finally, the layer that changes everything. Directed energy. In 2024, Lockheed Martin's IFPC-HEL successfully destroyed multiple drone and rocket targets at White Sands Missile Range. A concentrated beam of light burning through a target's structure in seconds. No ammunition, magazine limited only by electrical power. Cost per shot, $1 to $10. A Patriot Interceptor, $4 million. One shot. A THAAD Interceptor, $12.7 million. One shot. A directed energy weapon, $10. Unlimited shots. That is the elimination of the fundamental constraint limiting every missile defense system since the Nike Ajax. For 72 years, the attacker held the economic advantage. If directed energy weapons reach operational maturity, current timelines suggest the late 2020s to early 2030s, the equation inverts permanently. For the first time in history, it becomes cheaper to defend than to attack. But lasers have limits, degraded by weather, dust, atmospheric moisture, requiring megawatt-class power generation, most effective against slow, thin-skinned targets. Against hardened warheads re-entering at Mach 20 inside a plasma sheath that absorbs laser energy, directed energy alone is insufficient. Golden Dome layers both, lasers for cheap threats, kinetic kill vehicles for existential ones. Every threat matched to the most cost-efficient kill mechanism. $10 for the drone, $75 million for the nuclear warhead. Cost rationality across the entire threat spectrum for the first time. By 2035, the Pentagon envisions a fully integrated network where any missile launched anywhere on Earth is detected within seconds, tracked continuously, and engaged by the optimal interceptor, selected automatically by AI. The human role shifts from trigger puller to supervisor. Or when a hypersonic glide vehicle is 90 seconds from impact and maneuvering at Mach 15, the system acts alone. There is no time for a phone call. There is barely time for a thought. The machine decides, or the city dies. By 2040, space-based interceptors, kinetic or directed energy weapons in orbit, capable of engaging missiles during boost phase from above. First proposed under Star Wars, abandoned as unfeasible. Reopened by SpaceX reducing launch costs from $18,000 per kilogram to under $300. What was science fiction in 1983 is engineering in 2040. The orbital layer eliminates geography. A space-based interceptor doesn't care whether the missile launched from Pyongyang, Tehran, or a submarine in the Pacific. It sees everything. It reaches everything. By 2050, the vision is a persistent, autonomous, multi-domain shield. Satellites tracking every launch in real time. AI classifying threats, selecting interceptors, coordinating engagements across ground, sea, air, and space simultaneously. Directed energy eliminating cheap threats for pennies. Next-generation kill vehicles destroying hypersonic warheads with centimeter precision. AI discrimination algorithms distinguishing warheads from decoy swarms with confidence no human could achieve. The entire system operating at machine speed because human speed is no longer fast enough to protect human life. In 1944, a V-2 rocket crossed the English Channel faster than sound. The people of London heard nothing before the explosion. There was no warning. There was no defense. There was no answer. For 80 years, the world's most powerful nation has spent more treasure than any civilization in history trying to construct that answer. Nuclear-tipped interceptors in suburban backyards, missiles that accelerated at 100 Gs and glowed white from friction, a system that operated for a single day, a software bug that killed 28 soldiers, a treaty that made vulnerability into policy, a president's dream dismissed as fantasy, and an engineer in a quiet laboratory, building a weapon that moves at the speed of light and costs $10 to fire. Every chapter driven by the same tension, the same impossible equation. Defense is always more expensive than attack, until it isn't. 80 years building toward that single inversion point. Golden Dome is the bet that the inversion is finally here. Next week on Exodus, the complete evolution of stealth aircraft from a Soviet mathematician's forgotten paper to the sixth-generation fighter that radar cannot see, hear, or find. Subscribe to Exodus, so it is waiting for you. In 1944, no weapon on Earth could stop a V-2 rocket. The people below heard only the explosion. By 2050, a beam of light traveling at 186,000 miles per second may stop anything that flies before anyone on the ground hears a sound. From a nuclear warhead in a suburban neighborhood to an autonomous shield spanning a continent, the evolution of missile defense didn't just change how nations fight. It changed whether nations can be destroyed at all. This is Exodus, how everything transforms.